So continuing with this video, as you remember in the first video, the United States and the Soviet Union were jockeying for position in Iraq. So as they're trying to make sure that they're not stepping on the toes of Iraq, one of the things that they did is when it was pretty evident that Iraq was using poison gas within the war, both sides blocked a Security Council resolution denouncing Iraq for using the poison gas. The United States wanted to seem conciliatory and wanted to try to resume normalized relationship, whereas the USSR likewise wanted to do the same, but also wanted to not set a precedent as it was also using chemical weapons in Afghanistan. So the United States and Saudi Arabia. So these are two allies within the region. So in a response to an attack on a Saudi tanker, they implemented the fog line, which was effectively a no-fly zone near Saudi Arabia. So this created instances where the Saudi Arabians would get aircrafts involved with when people are coming close to their country. Likewise, the Saudis wanted to see Iran suffer. So the United States came up with a plan for the Saudi Arabians that would suffocate the two countries that they feared the most, the Soviet Union and Iran. So because Iran drew most of its revenue from oil sales, and that same thing with the Soviet Union, who was getting most of its revenues from oil at this point, this was partially because it was getting stuck in an arms race with the United States, protecting the outer space. But that's a different story. So what the United States suggested is that if Saudi Arabia increased its production of oil, it would, since it has a huge reserve of oil, so instead of keeping at the OPEC standards that they had created, if they increase the amount of oil that they're producing, they still get the same profit from oil, but it decreases the price of oil on the global market, which meant that the Iranians and Soviet Unions would not get near the amount of profit that it was getting beforehand. So this created new financial strain on the Iranians. Towards 1985, the Soviet Union had a new leader. So this is Mikhail Gorbachev. And when he first met with Saddam Hussein to try to see how relations would be, they had a really awkward introduction. It was a really awkward reception. And Saddam had the gall to say, we need better weapons. You guys aren't giving us enough weapons. The Soviets said, okay, but now we need cash instead of just credit for weapons. So this is going to put the Iraqis at a disadvantage with the Soviet Union. And after Iran got the Soviet Union's attention with the hostage crisis and through the negotiations, Iran actually somehow used this to get a better foothold with negotiations with the Soviet Union. So at this point, the Soviet Union realizes that war is counterproductive for it because oil is becoming very cheap and it's not giving them the profits that they want. So at this point, instead of it still refused to give weapons to Iran, but it did become Iran's advocate on the Security Council of the United Nations and tried to negotiate for a ceasefire. Both sides had kind of a complicated relationship with Turkey since it bordered both countries. So after an incident in Kurdistan where several Turkish soldiers entered into Iraqi territory to supposedly fight off some of the Iranians pushing into Kurdistan, this really upset the Iranians, and they threatened to start attacking oil pipelines that went through Turkey. And it was just a huge diplomatic mess. So because of this, Turkey thumbed its nose at Iran, and it responded by increasing material support to Iraq. So this meant that they would give them more clothes, give them more food, etc. And the Iranians responded to this by trying to break through to attack the oil pipeline, but they were never really successful. So otherwise, Turkey remained neutral during the war. the Iran-Contra affair. So this is going to become one of the biggest sticking points with the United States relationship in this war. So the United States had an idea through Israel. Israel suggested this plan, and Israel said that, how about Israel, we ship weapons to Iran because they're willing to pay money, top dollar for these weapons. So we'll ship Soviet weapons to Iran, and if you will ship us, Israel, US, like brand new weapons. So it'll update, it's a win for everyone. Iran gets Soviet weapons, Israel gets US weapons, and the United States gets paid. And it gets paid. And they wanted to use this money that it's getting paid to help finance the Contras. So the Contras are a group fighting the Somozas in Nicaragua. So this was a win-win for everybody, but it was also very controversial because it goes against all of the United States stance that it does not negotiate with terrorists. So this was a way to also get U.S. hostages back. So it was basically weapons for hostages. So this worked for the first couple of hostages, but eventually there were factions within Iran that did not like this negotiation, that they didn't like negotiating with the evil empire of the United States. So they leaked it to the press that this was going on. And because of this leak information, the United States, it came to the United States' attention that they're negotiating with terrorists. The United States looks foolish, especially the Reagan administration. And so they no longer can continue financing or giving weapons to Iran. So because of this, the Iranians, once again, they take more hostages. So everybody's back at square one, and it just makes everybody look foolish because they weren't able to have this big, faction going on. So we're going to stop here with this video, and then we'll continue with this slide to finish it off.